Right friends, welcome back to Learning Space, and we analyzed the paper of 2017 Civil Services Preliminary, and there are several aspects and there are several lessons to be learnt, and here you can easily infer 35 questions from Learning Space, and I have taken out around 8 to 10 questions. In addition to these 35 questions, there are 8 to 10 questions where reference is there from Learning Space lectures like Quality Council of India, like small finance banks and some other aspects we have taken out, because there you may not be able to infer 100% from our lectures. That's why we deleted those questions. Removing those questions, there are straight away 35 questions which you can draw inference from Learning Space lectures straight away with crystal clear clarity. And having said this, there are some lessons to be learnt. So for 2018 examination, we will consider these aspects from now onwards. You see, we should have reasonable grip on all the aspects, because in 2016 there was a lot of weightage for current affairs, and in 2017 the weightage got reduced and the weightage for Indian polity increased. So like that, there is a lot of unpredictability. So under these circumstances, all the students should have reasonable grip on the subjects. Current affairs, most important, national, international affairs, not only the current year, even the aspects pertaining to the past few years are also reflected in the questions. That is most important point. And economy mostly related to current events like the current account deficit, like state's fiscal deficit, as well as foreign direct investment, then external commercial borrowing. Such issues students should have clear idea about which is increasing, which is decreasing, and what is the state of affair in the country, at least after new economic policy. And another important aspect is geography map based, and we are planning to put more and more maps into the perspective. Because of the reason, there are several map based questions are appearing. Indian polity, students should have clear basic knowledge about Indian polity. Then history of modern India, ecology and environment, not only the current events, you have to dig it from various protocols and conventions. So that is very important aspect. There is a science and technology, and here we have to look at the application aspects. Then Press Information Bureau, we have already started. Then Yojana Kurukshetra and India Yearbook. And after looking at this year's paper along with the previous year's paper, and the important lesson to learn is we should have reasonable grip on almost all these aspects. Then second lesson to be learned is keep eye on minute details with regard to this national pension system. The question, it is very difficult to answer such type of questions, because in 2004 national pension system came into force for central government employees, but only months was tested in the exam, and it's not that easy to remember the month of 2004. So such type of aspects are appearing in UPSC. So keep eye on the minute details like years and months. Then one more aspect is certain degree of repetition in lectures is also required to remember important points. One classic example is BTIA. I almost repeated this BTIA between India and European Union, which was held up for the past 10 years. Almost 7 to 8 times I repeated in 2015 and 2016. But for the past 3-4 months, I have not repeated it. Similarly, domestic content requirement of solar cells, we had separate capsule on that. But for the past 2-3 months, I have not repeated that. And some students, in fact, in between are telling that you are repeating the things. But my fundamental point is certain degree of repetition is required. Otherwise, you will certainly forget. I talked in detail about domestic content requirement of solar cells, and I discussed number of times about BTIA, and I am not sure how many of the students answered the questions properly. Then policies and programs and government schemes require much deeper fine tuning. That is very important. Then whatever you learn with crystal clear clarity. Why and how, why it is happening, how it is happening. So all the things are very, very important. Then if you dig further, preempt and rule out the possibilities of choices in advance. Suppose this bankruptcy code is there. If you are expecting a question on bankruptcy code, rule out various choices and possibilities in advance. Frame your own questions, link it with other aspects like S4A, maybe with strategic debt restructuring, maybe with various other laws prevalent in our country. So like that, you have to rule out the possibilities of choices in advance so that you will not have confusion in the examination. And it requires at least 1 year for prelims preparation. Don't make it a preparation for 3 months or 4 months. Then the best way is to club prelims cum mains preparation. From now onwards, for 2018, if you club prelims cum mains preparation, that must be the best way of tackling the civil services exam. Then look at the international organizations, ecological issues, conventions meticulously, even though they are old, and make it a habit to look at the maps regularly with regard to geographical boundaries of states, locations of various cities, rivers, mountains in our country. Not only that, make it a habit to look at the boundaries of important countries or maritime boundaries. These are very, very important. So after looking at civil services paper for 2016 and 2017, these are the lessons to be learned, and we will try to implement from learning space side. Some of these things we will announce our plan of action, and one important aspect is we will try to incorporate some of these aspects for 2018 civil services preliminary. And our goal is at least the student must be able to answer 60 questions with crystal clear clarity after viewing learning space lectures. This year we concentrated only on current affairs, economy and current affairs related aspects of geography and polity, and in fact several other aspects are to be covered. And by the time you appear for 2018 civil services preliminary, we will be in a position to assure you that you will answer at least 60 questions with crystal clear clarity. That is our goal, that is our motto, and we are starting our plan of action, which will be announced within 3-4 days. Right friends, having learned this, let us go quickly on the questions. I have taken C series, and the first question is, which of the following have occurred after liberalization of economic policies? You see, I discussed in detail in economy lectures. Of course, these are discussed in current affairs also. In economy, these are discussed threadbare, and all of you are familiar from my lectures. This FDI inflows increased enormously. India's foreign exchange reserves increased enormously. In fact, this question I asked several times in recent times also. So 3 and 4 crystal clear for everybody's mind. So having known 3 and 4, one is certainly wrong. All of you are familiar with this. One is certainly wrong because share of agriculture in GDP increased enormously. So when one is certainly wrong, then the right option is B only, right? So here NPCI we discussed types of digital payments, and this slide I have shown you number of times. It is basically for integrating multiple payment systems, and here when the financial services are reached to the common man, that is financial inclusion at least possible cost. When financial services are reaching to the common man, that is financial inclusion. So here the first sentence is correct. The second sentence is also correct because we have discussed number of times. NPCI launched RuPay. So 1 and 2, C is the option. And here RuPay, I have shown you number of times this RuPay when I am discussing current affairs. Then goods and services tax, first option, every one of you are clear about that. It will replace multiple taxes. In fact, almost everyone knows about it, I need not take any credit for that. But the point to note here is it will drastically reduce the current account deficit. It will enormously increase the growth. These 2 points, by looking at drastically, by looking at enormously, you can strike out these 2 options. It will drastically reduce the current account deficit. How the current account deficit will be reduced? Current account deficit can be reduced only when we reduce imports or when we increase exports. In fact, logistically, GST will improve our GDP in the long run by 1% to 2%, and it will not result in drastic reduction in current account deficit. So, here these 2 can be ruled out. So, 1 is the answer. Then, if you go further, BTIA, this is the trade agreement which was stalled for the past 10 years from 2007, that is between India and the European Union, right? So, please look into this slide. At the same time, I asked a question also in 2016, almost 8 to 10 times I discussed this. Here you see, India ratified the trade facilitation agreement of WTO. Absolutely, I discussed number of times. TFA is part of WTO's Bali Ministerial Package of 2013. In fact, we discussed in Insight of February 2016. You may not remember or recollect. Here the third sentence is TFA came into force in January 16. So, this is wrong. So, here 1 and 2 correct. Then the next one is, what is the importance of developing Chabahar Port by India? Here you see, we have shown number of maps. There will be access. This was the map I have taken from the lectures what we have taught you. Chabahar Port facilitate access to Central Asian markets. Not only that, Afghanistan, Central Asia can be accessed bypassing Pakistan. We discussed number of times this issue. So, the answer here is India will not depend on Pakistan for access to Afghanistan and Central Asia. And if you go further, what is the purpose of Vidyanjali Yojana? We discussed in detail in policies and programs. Not only that, this picture also we have shown, that is the co-scholastic activities. So, here the right option is this one. So, this is the right option, 2 only, because other options can easily be discarded when you know the Vidyanjali Yojana clearly. Then, if you look at the next question, consider the following statements. We discussed number of times about election commission in our current affairs. We have discussed simultaneous polls as a separate capsule. In editorial discussion, we discussed, and as a separate slide for election commission, we discussed. And a number of times we discussed chief election commissioner and 2 election commissioners, and like that it appeared a number of times. So, here Election Commission of India is a 5-member body, wrong. Union Ministry of Home Affairs decides, wrong. So, this splits and mergers of recognized political parties, number of times we discussed about this. So, here the answer is 3 only. Then if you go further, so this is what we have discussed while we were discussing about election commission and state election commission. Then judicial review in current affairs, especially in editorial discussion, we discussed number of times judicial review, judicial activism, all these words we discussed, though it appears as a polity question. But we discussed number of times this one, the power of the judiciary to pronounce upon the constitutionality of laws and executive orders, right? So, in editorial discussion, we discussed about judicial review. This was the slide taken from that editorial discussion. Then consider the following statements. Here you see, tax revenue as a percentage of GDP of India has steadily increased. Absolutely wrong. We discussed number of times. It is hovering around 17%. If you add center and states put together, it is hovering around 17% or so for the past 7 to 10 years. We discussed about that. And fiscal deficit as a percentage of GDP has increased. Absolutely wrong. From our discussions, you will be very clear, 3.5%. reduced to 3.2%. Next year, finance minister told 3%. So, these things I discussed number of times. So, this requires no special classes, and it is all evident from current affairs. So, when we start our current affairs program next week, we will certainly try to make you clear about several concepts, what we are doing for the past 1 or 2 years. Then this question, I asked 3-4 times. This is Pulpo Cunha Wildlife Sanctuary, right? So here you see questions and answers 2016, and here we started, WII stated that shifting of about 40 lines was delayed to Pulpo Cunha Sanctuary from Gir Sanctuary. So this issue we discussed 2-3 number of times. Then the next one is, which of the following is geographically closest to Great Nicobar? And please don't forget, I have shown you this map number of times. Not only that, I have shown you this Malacca Strait number of times. This Malacca Strait I have shown you number of times, and not only that, this Andaman and Nicobar Islands I have shown you number of times, and this island also I told you number of times in the current affairs. So that is Sumatra. So these type of questions we will try to increase the intensity for 2018 Civil Services preliminary exam, right? Then which of the following is not a feature of Indian federalism? This federal concept we discussed number of times. This picture I have shown you number of times, and I explained you various aspects. And here there is an independent judiciary in India, absolutely correct. Powers divided between center and states, I have told you this aspect number of times. 7th schedule, article 246, union list, state list, concurrent list. So like that we discussed all the aspects, though they are polity aspects, but I discussed in detail in current affairs. The federating units have been given unequal representation in the Rajya Sabha. Rajya Sabha members vary. All of you are familiar with that. So it is the result of, and this is the wrong one. So D is the option. So like that, we have discussed various aspects. You see, Mediterranean Sea is a border of which of the following countries? You see, I have shown you. In fact, I asked one question in Q&A revision. Not only that, this Mediterranean Sea, this border I have shown you and explained you number of times what are the countries bordering this. At the same time, this map I have shown you number of times, and during the past 15 days, I told you 2-3 times with regard to the borders of this Mediterranean Sea. I told you this is Cyprus, Lebanon, Israel, Egypt. These have border along with Syria. These have border with this Mediterranean Sea. Right? So here it is a very simple question. If you follow the maps, Mediterranean Sea is a border of which of the following countries? It is Lebanon and Syria. So C is the option. So if in your mind, if this map is there, then you can easily answer the question. National Investment and Infrastructure Fund, we discussed number of times as recent as March 2017 also. We discussed Sujay Bose became CEO of NIIF, and in this context we discussed, and this is wrong absolutely. Corpus of 4 lakh crores is absolutely wrong. Those who have followed my lectures straight away can answer this, neither 1 nor 2, right? Look at the next one. Consider the following statements. Western Ghats are spread over 5 states. We have one question also we asked here in the Q&A discussion. This Western Ghats spreads over 6 states. I told you number of times. And here Pulicat Lake also I explained you. This passes through 2 states. I have told several times it spreads across 2 states. And these 2 things are clearly known to you. This is correct. And Himalayas question, you can easily rule out that, because Himalayas are spread across number of states in northern part of the country. So this question can be easily answered if you follow my lectures. So here 3 is the answer. Pulicat Lake is spread across Andhra Pradesh and Tamil Nadu. And if you go further, biological oxygen demand is a standard criterion. And I told this issue number of times. Ulsur Lake in Bengaluru in my current affairs, not only current affairs, in the revision also, I explained several fish died in Ulsur Lake because of the dissolved oxygen levels came down. So the dissolved oxygen levels, I explained you clearly, when dissolved oxygen levels comes down, that indicates there is pollution. So this term biological oxygen demand, BOD, is the criteria to assess pollution in aquatic ecosystems. Right? So Ulsur Lake is classic example. Then National Career Service, I have explained you this in the preliminary discussion also, 27th. And Not only that, in 2016 also we discussed about this, and this National Career Service, that is basically monitored by the Ministry of Labour. It connects job givers and job seekers, that is the platform. And then second one, this is absolutely wrong. After hearing my lecture, you can easily say that neither one nor two, right? Then if you go further, S4A, I need not explain anything. I told you number of times, a scheme of Reserve Bank of India for reworking the financial structure of big corporate entities facing genuine difficulties. This is S4A. This picture I have shown you number of times. Next question is Indian Ocean Dipole. This I explained in the editorials 4 by 16th week. Here we clearly explained. You see, it is the difference in the temperatures of eastern equatorial Indian Ocean and western part of the Indian Ocean, right? So here this is the point about Indian Ocean Dipole. I explained here with regard to good monsoon, that is 4 by 16th week. There we discussed about El Nino as well as Indian Ocean Dipole. So the first sentence is wrong. It mentioned about Pacific Ocean. Here IOD phenomenon can influence an El Nino's impact on the monsoon. That is correct. So this we discussed threadbare, right? Then the next one is soil health card scheme. This was discussed, of course, in 2015, and subsequently I repeated number of times, and this is very clear. The cards will carry crop wise recommendations of fertilizers required for the farmlands. It's a very simple question. So here checking the overuse of fertilizers in farmlands. So 3 only is the right answer. And if you go further, this is about global gender gap index. This I asked 3-4 times. The latest one is 44th week, and subsequently also I told you about this global gender gap index. This is released by World Economic Forum. And if you go further, this monetary policy committee, I told you almost 10 to 12 times about this. Here amendments to RBI Act 1934 were done to facilitate establishment of monetary policy committee. So this was shown you almost half a dozen times in the lectures. So from that you can easily answer this question. It decides RBI's benchmark interest rates. Absolutely correct. 12-member body. I have just now shown you 6-member body. Functions under the chairmanship. I told you RBI governor is the key person who also has the casting vote in case of tie. So the answer here is 1 only. Then if you go further, Manipuri Sankirtana, I told you in the 29th revision, it is a song and dance performance. Please look at the slides. I have told you just 3 days before your examination. Here this is Manipuri dance, and here Radha, Krishna and Gopis. Important, I have shown you with pictures also. And the main musical instrument here is Pung or Manipuri classical drum, which I have shown with pictures. Pung or Manipuri classical drum. You see here in the question, cymbals are the only musical instruments used in the performance. I have shown you about Pung. So this second sentence is wrong. So 1 and 3 correct. Right, these are clearly told in this Manipuri dance lecture. And next one is Benami Property Transactions Act. Please look into this slide. This was shown you almost half a dozen number of times. Here you see transactions are considered as benami if the owner is not aware of the ownership. Please look into the first one. A property transaction is not treated. He has given in the reverse. First one is wrong. Then properties held by benami are liable for confiscation. You see, government can confiscate benami property. I told you number of times about this, right? So second sentence is correct. You see, third one, does not provide for any appellate mechanism. He has given in the reverse. You see, this is mechanism, adjudicating authority with the schematic diagram we have shown, which indicates appellate authority also, but here reverse is given. So 2 only correct. So what I mean to say is, while viewing the lectures, please have patience. Don't make it forward because the facility is available in the videos. So that will not do for civil services exam. and for 2018 examination we will come up with much more features so that students can easily answer 60 questions. Then domestic content requirement, this I explained half a dozen number of times, and here editorial discussions also we have discussed. This WTO rules against India in solar cells case, this is solar cells and modules domestic content requirement, and this was in fact discussed number of times previously also. View of India, then view of World Trade Organization, the domestic content requirement. So solar cells case, so simple question is asked, right? So developing solar power production in our country. So simple answer if you have the details, or you can say if you simply follow learning space lectures. And please remember, I have taken the questions where you can answer with clarity. Around 10 questions I have omitted because I thought that I have not taught you up to the standard given in the question paper. Then national pension system, and this is quite a tricky question because it is not that easy to remember, only month is the difference here. Then you see here which of the following, who among the following can join the national pension system, we discussed about this. Here you see the contributory pension system was implemented with effect from 1st January 2004, and here you see it is given as 1st April 2004. So this is wrong, and I can tell you this is not that easy to answer because it pertains to 2004 and month also. Then resident Indian citizens only, not only resident Indian citizens, NRIs are also allowed recently, and I told you this recently. You can look at the lectures, NRIs are also allowed to participate in this. Here you see NPS is open to all the citizens of the country, right? Then another important aspect is here resident Indian citizens only, wrong. Whether resident or non-resident, it is applicable to all the citizens. Then age is 18 to 60. Then all state government employees joining the service after the date of notification is correct now. So here this is quite tricky question. That's why it may be difficult for you to answer this because month is also involved there, right? So if you go further, river Teesta, and here I brought one separate capsule on Teesta river dispute. This is capsule 3 of 14th week 2017. In Teesta river dispute, I explained you about Teesta river, and in clear terms I explained it originates in Sikkim from Kongse glacier, flows through Cholamu lake in Sikkim. After traversing 150 kilometers, it enters the plains of West Bengal. After flowing through 120 kilometers in plains of West Bengal, it enters Bangladesh and then flows into Brahmaputra, right? Here you see first sentence, source of river Teesta is the same of Brahmaputra, absolutely wrong. Then river Teesta flows into Bay of Bengal on the border of India and Bangladesh. You see the statement, it is absolutely wrong. It enters into Bangladesh. It does not flow into Bay of Bengal at the border of India and Bangladesh. So 1 and 3 absolutely wrong. If you do not know about river Rangit also, you can answer this question because leftover is only this. Then the next one is Zika virus. I told you umpteen number of times Zika virus disease is transmitted by the same mosquito that transmits dengue and other also. So here first one everyone knows, sexual transmission of Zika is also possible. I told you 3-4 times about this. Here you see Zika virus is being transmitted through sex, has also been reported in USA, right? Here this is caused by Aedes mosquito, which also causes dengue, chikungunya and yellow fever. So what more is left over? It is straight cut question. You can put both 1 and 2. Then the next one is national agriculture market. This of course all of you may be knowing about it. We told you number of times in the discussion also. I asked about ENAM, and previously also we discussed number of times this electronic national agriculture market. So you may not have any doubt about it. Here it is Pan India electronic trading portal for agricultural commodities. It provides the farmers access to nationwide market and price commensurate with the quality of their produce. So here both 1 and 2, right? Then the next one is National Intellectual Property Rights Policy. I explained you in detail about this. In fact, in editorial also we discussed regarding the TRIPS. It is trade related aspects of intellectual property rights, and subsequently in prelims discussion also I asked the question on this National Intellectual Rights Policy. Department of Industrial Policy and Promotion is the nodal authority. The same is asked. It reiterates India's commitment to the Doha Development Agenda and TRIPS Agreement. Department of Industrial Policy and Promotion is the nodal agency for regulating intellectual property. So both are correct. Then the next one is Unified Payments Interface, UPI. I told you number of times, even here also I have asked, and in several of our lectures it appeared. Here UPI, mobile wallets will not be necessary for online payments. Absolutely, if you want to make online payment, then mobile wallets will not be required. Then remaining options you can strike off straight away because of the reason digital currency will totally replace. Absolutely wrong. FDI inflows will drastically increase. You cannot say. Direct transfer of subsidies to poor people will become very effective. Poor people, this cannot be a direct link actually. So the first one is the right option. Then if you go further, main advantage of parliamentary form of government, I discussed about various aspects pertaining to office of profit, parliamentary secretaries. At that time I discussed number of times about this. The most important feature of parliamentary form of democracy is executive remains responsible to the legislature. That is the reason why this office of profit concept came into focus, right? So this aspect I have shown and I have explained you number of times. This also I have explained. Mind of the makers of the constitution is reflected in the preamble. In the editorial discussions I told you number of times. If you travel by road from Kohima to Kottayam, maximum number of states which you are required to travel, answer is 7. Why I have taken this question is, the students whoever followed learning space lectures can answer this question, because northeastern part of the country I have shown almost 10 to 12 times. Northeastern states, especially boundary states of this Myanmar and Nagaland, Arunachal, Nagaland, Manipur, Mizoram. This way I explained a number of times. So here after Nagaland, then straight away into Assam, subsequently Assam to West Bengal. All of you are familiar with this route. So all of you are familiar with our maps. Whoever have seen these maps number of times will definitely answer this question without any iota of doubt. Right friends, with this let us conclude this discussion. And what I mean to say is, I have taken 35 questions which can be answered by the students by following learning space lectures. We covered only current affairs and economy and the other aspects related to current affairs only. And this is one important feature to note. Second point is, the questions from current affairs reduced drastically this year. And there are at least 10 more questions which I have not taken because of the reason you may find difficulty, because I have not covered all the aspects. Even carbon sequestration I explained, small finance banks I explained, then skills qualification framework I have explained, then Quality Council of India I explained, but those things I have not taken because I have not covered in detail required for answering your question. I straight away admit that. And these questions, at least 25 of them can be solved by you straight away by viewing our lectures, but it can go up to 30 if you apply the presence of mind during the examination. And our focus and what we are going to do for the next year, we are going to announce our plan of action within few days, and definitely we will also try to look at the lessons learned from this year's and last year's examination. Alright friends, please don't lose heart. Prepare well for 2018 examination, because knowledge is always power. Right? Have a nice day. Thank you.